All right. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know it's going to take a moment for people to join us on the different platforms. We are going to be broadcasting live tonight on Facebook, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. So, hi, everybody. I'm Sandy B. Law. I am here with the lovely Lisa K. Crawford. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, beautiful Sandy B. How are you this evening? Happy Friday.
Oh, it is definitely a happy Friday. I hope some folks will hop on and join us in this conversation, but either way, they're going to catch this replay.
Oh boy.
Um, but tonight, we're going to talk about something that we've probably been talking about for quite some time, and it is who's your family? And we're going to talk about the probate real estate and the family tree that you and I cross paths with all the time. And I think we should probably tell folks why we decided to talk about this and then show the little clip that really triggered us
Oh
both
my
in
God.
a full on laughter session, especially this afternoon after what we had an experience with.
I
So
think I have to let you tell it, Sandy. I really do, because I would probably laugh through the entire thing.
man, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. So, if you are tuning in with us tonight, we are talking about probate real estate. We're talking about the importance of the family tree. Please drop your location in the comments. Let us know where you are watching us from. And please don't hesitate to drop your questions in the comments. I am here with Lisa K. Crawford of Lisa K. Crawford Esquire PLLC and yours truly of Spectrum Law Firm Miami PLLC. We are both attorney entrepreneurs, and we spend a great deal of time dealing with probate matters, dealing with estate planning, dealing with real estate issues when it comes to both. And so tonight's impromptu live stream was motivated by a funny TikTok. I don't know if it was TikTok or if it was an Instagram reel, but I decided to do it on my Instagram, and Lisa was just dying laughing.
Oh my God. I couldn't even go to bed. I laughed so hard. I just stayed up way past my bedtime. That was so funny.
Look, Lisa couldn't help herself. She had to remix it. And today, we literally had a real life storyline from the social media reels in my
Oh
family. So Lisa was looking at me like, what? So I'm going to go ahead and play the little video clip because we're already in about 2 minutes. So if you're tuning in again, please don't hesitate to drop something in the comments. Let us know where you are tuning in from. We appreciate your comments. We appreciate your questions if you have any. But we're going to watch a quick little video that will reflect our storyline today. And please excuse my imagery, but I've been really diving deep into my social media lately, and I couldn't help but do this one. So let's listen in.
my.
Roydale and Alberstein's grandmother and my grandmother, okay, they were sisters. So that make me and Roydale and Alberstein, okay, that's going to be Roydale and Alberstein's
I gotta play it
grandmother
2 times.
and my grandmother,
Oh my gosh.
okay, they were sisters. So that make me and Roydale and Alberstein, okay, that's going to be Roydale and Alberstein.
So I'm not even gonna play it 3 times, but I'm gonna tell you all
I'm
something.
so weak
Lisa
on
and
it.
I were like weak laughing at this because I discovered today that I was Alberstein and my brother is Roydale. And we have grandmothers who are sisters. And I was speaking with my family on my grandmother's side. And it was just so funny that we were experiencing this situation. And it's like, you never really understand the family tree. And Lisa didn't know who she was connecting me with today was my family on my grandmother's side.
What are the odds? What are the odds? I need it. My clients, they only spoke, in this case, they spoke Creole. I don't speak Creole very fluently, maybe one word, and that's just Creole. But so I needed help, and I called my friend Sandy,
Yes.
who I know because of her Haitian background that she speaks Creole very, very well and very, very fluently.
You're too
And I
kind.
said, "Hey, sis, can you help me out today? can you jump on a Zoom with me? I need to ask some questions of the client, and I don't speak Creole. And so Sandy agreed to do that. And what happened from there, Sandy?
We discovered that I'm Albestine and my brother is Roydell. And our
Lord.
grandmothers, they were sisters. So what it triggered for me is something that Lisa and I have been talking about for a very long time. And it's something that many people don't understand until they're in the thick of a probate case. And they are sitting there trying to pull together the family tree. And they start to realize that Roydell and Albestine are not on the same page. And the whole family is just going at each other over a piece of real estate. So tonight, we're going to talk about the real situation when it comes to Roydell, Albestine, the grandmothers, and the sisterhood. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
So first, for a little background, I think we should talk a little bit about real estate when it comes to probate. And I guess we should start with some definitions, right? Because many times people don't really know these terms, because we as attorneys, we use these terms all the time very loosely. But most times people don't really understand what these terms are. So I think we should do some definitions, Lisa. I'll start with talking a little bit about estate planning, something that most people need, but most people fail to understand. Estate planning is a process by which you identify your last wishes and you put into place the necessary documents, the necessary beneficiary designations, and other necessary tools to ensure that whatever it is that you own in your name only goes to the individuals or entities of your choice. And so that's the whole process when it comes to, if you're going to plan for your estate, you're planning for where your items, your ownership is going to transfer to. Now, I'm going to let Lisa talk a little bit about probate and this real estate connection, because, you know, estate planning, without it, we tend to end up in a lot of these probate real estate issues that Lisa and I laugh about all the time.
Well, I will not comment until you give your family tree history, which proves that you are in fact of Roydell and Albestine's lineage. So go ahead and tell the story, Sandy.
So I'll break it down. So today I was thinking about something, and I was talking to my great aunt, my grandmother's sister, who also had on the phone my second cousin and my third cousin. So that means that our grandmothers, in terms of the cousins, they were sisters. So my brother and I, technically, when we think about that Instagram reel or that TikTok, whatever it is, my brother and I are Roydell and Albestine, because our grandmothers were sisters. And we were just dying laughing today, because I was literally talking to someone who was my cousin, and our grandmothers were sisters. So that is an example of how
Roydell.
The family tree
Albestine.
Roydell and Albestine can really be a metaphor for a lot of different things, and be an example in life for a lot of different scenarios. But go ahead, Lisa. Tell us a little bit about
that was great. I loved it. I just can't, I can't get enough. I just can't get enough of that. Yeah. So the way I like to think of this whole concept of estate planning is I really feel that I have to move away from anything that sounds legal and technical,
Right.
because we're talking to just everyday people about their everyday lives and the people and the things that they care for. So to the extent that we are all going to leave here one day, which is a given fact, we have to think about what is the future for those that we're leaving behind.
Right.
What kind of what will be your footprint, so to speak,
Right.
that legacy, and how do you want that to pass down? And not only that, how do you want the people who receive from you to be educated? How do you want them to understand about how to deal with things that you're leaving behind? Because people have these visions of, ideally, I would love for this to happen. And I would love to see my children do A, B, C, and D. And if they don't, so be it, but I would love to see them give a try on this, whatever that might be. So if you set up your legacy in that way, you can actually communicate in a way with your beneficiaries to your trust and kind of relay what your ideal vision is for the legacy that you're leaving. And
Right.
there may be children that will buy into that and say, you know, I want to do it just the way mom or dad intended for things to go. And I want to invest the way they wanted me to. And I want to try what made them successful. So it's a really beautiful concept about legacy and estate planning when you look at it just from just a totally humanistic point of view. And yes, Sandy and I have to talk about legal definitions because we can't help that part because we're lawyers. But we also have to drop back and explain it in different ways so that people can really get it. So it's just about setting things in order. And I think it's also about training the people that you may be leaving things to get them set up to understand your mindset, that they receive things in the right way. Somebody said when you give a card to someone, it might be their birthday, right? You might put $25 in the card and you make a nice little note and you say something nice to that person and you give it to them. But when we give things to people away in trust and wills, we don't give them really any instructions or any thought behind the gift.
Right.
Oh, and so it's so many things that we can start doing to think like that I think will help people to understand better about leaving legacies and how they want to do it and how they want people to accept it and receive it.
That's the absolute truth. And shout out to Rigo. Always appreciate you popping in to say hey to us and tune in to our broadcast. You know, us
Thank
and
you, Rigo.
our shenanigans. We go through it.
Yes, he knows us very well.
So to keep things on layman's terms, since today we're going to talk about who's your family, and we're going to talk about this family tree and why it's important when it comes to dealing with things like estate planning and probate. Let's talk about some bare bones. So a lot of times, Lisa and I end up having certain types of cases where we're literally trying to piecemeal who is on the family tree when it comes to a piece of real estate. And so let's think of it from this perspective. Every person in your family almost has a seat at a table. That's how I would describe it. Every person in your family has a seat at the table. And even when someone passes away, they may not physically be sitting in that seat, but that seat is still there. That's how I would kind of describe it so that people can understand when we're dealing with the family tree and then we're looking at a court process like a probate. So when you have a piece of real estate, let's say you have a house, and let's say your grandmother lived in that house. But when grandma passes away, we still have people living in the house, right? Most of the time it might be grandma's children or it might be some grandchildren, but somebody tends to be living in the house. This is like the story that I hear all the time. Somebody's living in the house, grandmother passes away. Nobody stops to think, hey, we have to make sure that this property gets retitled. Like there has to be some transfer of the ownership of this property. Most of the time people just think that they can just continue living on the property. But here's the problem. The property is in grandma's name. And the more time that passes, the more likely that we're going to have more and more and more people involved in the process. And so we're always like, you know, how can we get people to understand that if you really want to make sure that grandma's property is not lost, like Big Mama's house is not taken away from the family, then we have to make some smarter choices about what happens to Big Mama's house when she passes away.
Yeah.
So the first step is making sure that she passes away right now, that right now should be the time that we're having the discussion. And I'm not saying in the midst of a funeral or in the midst of other arrangements, but at the bare minimum, within a month or two of her passing, or even grandpa's passing, there has to be a process underway. And it's important for everybody in the family that's involved to make sure that that process happens, whether or not you are the only person who's going to receive it or not. And I think that's the problem that I find a lot, Lisa, is there's dynamics in the family where maybe there's one person dealing with everything, and then anybody else that's connected is like, oh, that's not my problem.
Yes.
But they're ready and willing to receive when they realize, oh, I may have an interest.
Yeah, and people don't really understand that the way they should. And that's why I think people who own the property before they give it away in a will or something like that, you got to have conversations. You almost got to educate the people that you're leaving property to so that they understand and know how to take care of it. If they don't already own property or have that knowledge, then it's about not only passing down the property, but it's about passing down some education so that you're, keeping a certain standard so that property stays in the family. So people need to understand exactly what Sandy's saying, because especially in Black families, as you know, Sandy, we have lost a lot of real estate wealth, basically since the end of slavery and the Civil War.
That is a pure fact, and I don't even need to go as far back, but to look at some present day issues, which is gentrification, a primary issue. A lot of blight in areas where homes have just been basically abandoned because folks decided, that's not my problem.
Right.
I'm not interested.
Right.
That's not my problem. But what we don't realize is every piece of real estate that is lost could have been legacy, could have been generational wealth, could have been wealth transfer from one generation to the next.
I don't want to take for granted. I'm listening to you talk, but I'm going to look up that word legacy because you mentioned it a couple times, and I think it's worth defining.
Right. And while you're looking that up, one of the things that I recognize is when I listen to a lot of conversation on social media regarding this type of topic, most of the time people are very centered on this concept of generational wealth, generational wealth, generational wealth. The problem is one of the generations has to trickle down to the next, and then the next, and then the next, for us to even have this conversation. So when you take something like real estate that could have a substantial value and you just either lose it or get rid of it, you are getting rid of thousands and thousands of dollars that could have been maintained in the family, because a piece of real estate is a key thing that could be passed on from one generation to the next.
It's worth its weight in gold, to be honest with you. It really is. So,
Absolutely.
Definition of legacy. Leaving a legacy, right? It says a gift by will, especially of money or other personal property. It also says, like in a sentence, she left us a legacy of $1 million. One other one, something transmitted by or received from an ancestor or predecessor, or
Right.
from the past, the legacy of the ancient philosophers. The war left the legacy of suffering and pain. So something of value that is being given away. There's many different meanings, but in this case, it's something of value that's being passed on from your ancestors or those that have come before you.
And the truth of the matter is, legacy is not just about the personal items that have value, but it's also about the value systems that we are left. If you think about our ancestors, our grandparents, some of the traditions that are passed on from generation to generation, the respectability that may be passed on from generation to generation, the ideas of family and togetherness, things like reunions and gatherings that people cherish from generation. I have several friends that they have family reunions and they have activities amongst the family. I've never really known that. I think I've maybe had one family reunion in my whole lifetime. that I've attended, and it was years and years and years ago, when my grandmother was much younger. I think we were celebrating her like 85th birthday or something. And then the last time we got together was when she passed. But I think that was the only time I remember ever having any kind of massive family gathering for one portion of the family. Um, so I feel a bit disjointed when it comes to trying to kind of figure out my tree, because, you know, we have two sides to our families, right? We have our mother's side, we have our father's side, and then each one of them has two sides. And I think on my mother's side, from her father's end, there were several individuals who have carried on and created a family tree. Like I have it on paper, family tree, probably
Nice.
up to not my generation, but up to my nephew's generation.
I think that's a
has been
great
completed.
family exercise. I really think that is a great family exercise to do the family tree.
Yeah,
Everybody should probably have it listed out as far back as they could possibly go.
absolutely. And I know that I mean, for us, ours on my mom's dad's side goes pretty far. Um on my grandmother's side, on my dad's side, I think they started doing one too. I just haven't really got a handle of it. But I know that I'm going to put that on my list to make sure that I start
Okay.
working through that. Um, but to talk about the reason that we wanted to discuss the family tree, here in South Florida, when you are opening a probate, whether or not there's a will, you have to do what's called an affidavit of heirs. And I believe that's something that recently they've started implementing more and more.
Yes.
And I think, and I'm just telling you my thoughts, but I'm sure that they have their own thoughts about why they created that process. But I think part of it is to make sure that if there is some issue, if somebody's left out, if some, question exists, when you do that affidavit of heirs, you do it under penalties of perjury. And on many occasions, I've had a situation where somebody improperly fills it out. They're like, they don't include somebody. And I'm like, you can't exclude anybody from here. You have to include everybody, whether or not you feel that they are entitled or not, because it's not about what you feel as an entitlement. It's about who's your family, right? That's our title tonight. Who's your family? And the affidavit of heirs allows you to identify who your family is to several degrees,
Right.
to several generations.
Right.
And it's an important tool that helps, when we have a situation where we can't figure certain things out. Well, at least we can look to see who the next person in line is if someone passes away. And I'm going to be honest, I've had a situation or two where somebody, while we're in the middle of a probate, a family member who was one of the beneficiaries passes away. So now we have to figure out, well, who did they leave? If they had any children, those children would step in. If they didn't have children, okay, fine. But if they had children, then their children potentially would have an interest. And so that's an important piece about understanding who your family is and making sure that you have a good understanding of your family tree.
That is very, very important. And another thing is, like, we talk about the family tree. I think we also have to look at our business's health as well. So you got the family side and you got the business side. Don't forget to look at the health of your business and see who, what's the hierarchy of your business structure and who would be next in line to take over that business interest and run it. And you got to have documents in place for that. So you got the family side and you also have the business side. I just wanted to throw that in there. But going back to that affidavit of heirs that has to be filled out in every probate case. And probate means that you're in court. You're in court because a person has passed away. They have property in their own name and nobody can transfer it out of their name to nobody else. Why? Because they passed away and no one legally can do it now. So
Right.
that means that somebody has to hire an attorney, go to court to get those assets transferred, either pursuant to a will. And as Sandy and I know, many times there isn't no will, but assets still have to be transferred. And then in that case, we have to do what the law says. Who is the next person to receive in line? So that's how that process goes. And people say, can you avoid probate? I don't want my family going to court, paying money out to a bunch of lawyers. I'd rather have my money go directly to my heirs and my beneficiaries. So that's the time to consult and talk to a lawyer. When you're thinking like that while you're alive, have some health, have some strength, that's the time where you say, look, I need to talk to a lawyer because I do not want all my money going to some lawyers. When I leave here, I want it to go to where I want it to go, whether that's some foundation that you want to contribute to or to your heirs. It can planning. Sandy, I say it all the time. It boils down to just basic planning. And it don't mean somebody gonna die just because you start planning.
Well, in addition to what you're saying about the connection between planning and going through the court process, one question that came to mind that people ask all the time is, well, if I have a will, why am I going through the probate court process? Like why? And what people don't understand is a will only provides instructions. It gives instructions to your family. It gives instructions to the court, but a will can't transfer title. A will can't transfer an interest in a financial account. A will can't provide you with a transfer of any interest in anything. The only thing a will can do is allow the individuals who are the family of the person who passes away to access things like their personal effects, like household things, maybe a vehicle and boats and jewelry and things like that. But generally speaking, the will can't transfer title to a home. Right. You can't access a bank account with a will. So you have to go through a court process with that will so that you can get the necessary court orders in order to be able to access that bank account, in order to be able to access the ability to transfer the interest in a piece of property. And the same goes for if you don't have a will. You got to go through the court process in order to get the necessary court orders so that you can get access to whatever it is that that person owned when they passed away.
Yeah, I think we should tell a nightmare story before we get out of here. Like, I have a nightmare story. You have nightmare stories. I think we should share. I think we should share at least one nightmare story.
All right, you go first.
I'll go first. My one nightmare story has to do with this topic you're just talking about wills. So there's a lady. She's the mom. She has one daughter. That is her next of kin. That's her living heir when she passes will be her daughter. She has not spoken to her daughter in a number of years. They have been estranged from each other. There has been no love between mother and daughter for a number of years. Probably the better part of like 15 years. Maybe going on 20, a long time, right?
Yeah.
Mom passes away. She doesn't think about, because she didn't leave a will. She's thinking that, I don't know what she's thinking, but the person who gets all of her stuff, guess who gets all of her stuff?
Oh boy.
The daughter that she hasn't spoken to. There may have been someone else in her life that might have been more deserving of all her retirement benefits, all of her bank accounts, her house, her pension. I mean, daughter hit a payday in a manner of speaking.
Right.
And she happily received everything that she was legally entitled to. But I'm just saying, with this, if this mom had known that this was the result, I wonder if she would have done something differently during her life.
You know what's funny is I'm going to tell my horror story that is literally right in line with what you just talked about. And it was basically a guy who passes away, has a whole batch of kids, and but he's estranged from those kids. So for much of his adulthood, he's living with, his partner, and he and his partner are living a good life. Guy passes away in the process of receiving large lump sum of money. Unfortunately, he did not have a will. Unfortunately, he did not have any designations on his bank accounts or any other things that would have led to his partner receiving that large sum of money. And mind you, his partner had, intended to receive a good chunk of that money because they were supporting, one another for a long time. And so when the money was coming, the partner had said that he had agreed to give him, half of the money. Well, he passes away right in the process of receiving these funds. Unfortunately, the funds came into an account and they didn't have a chance to remove any of the funds to transfer. And by the time the partner even realizes anything, bank's already frozen the account. So you got to go get court orders. Well, guess what? Estranged children, I think it was like 4 or 5 of them, they received that lump sum. Not the partner who'd been with him for like 20, maybe plus years. So it went to the estranged children, every single penny of that large sum. Now, in my mind, I would think to myself, estranged child, give the partner some money. I think one of them might have given a little bit. But I think the rest of them were like, forget that. I'm taking my bread and going. I don't care if I was estranged. That's what he owes me or something. And I'm like, it's so sad that you hear these stories over and over. And I can't count how many times I have folks that are, cohabitating or whatever they may be, but they unfortunately don't take the step of putting documents in place. And then one passes away or falls into a coma in the hospital, whatever. It's a lot of stuff that can happen. And one simple set of documents could prevent all of these horror stories. Just one set of documents.
And we're dealing with the basics. Now, one of the things that comes up a lot of time, people think like it's expensive to engage in estate planning and get these documents together. It's very expensive. You could pay, some people pay lots of money. They could pay anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 for documents that involve a number of estate planning documents, including a trust. I mean, it can get expensive. What do you say to those kind of issues that come up in people's lives that may stop them from estate planning when they probably should?
I'm going to be honest. I don't think there's anything that will stop you from estate planning if that's what your true intention is. I think the problem is we have a lack of prioritization. Yes, estate planning can be pricey. Yes, it can be difficult for some people to do. However, there are a lot of different resources and access to it. There's just so much out here. We are in the age of technology where everything is at your fingertips. And even though I'm not a fan of online, software and things like that, if you just have to get something for the time being, then you got to do what you got to do. Not according to my advice, but I'm just telling you, you have to do what you have to do for your family and your protection. And to be honest, when the judge gets a will, they're reading it for plain language. So if at the bare minimum you get the core information in there, you should be good to go. And the other thing is, I don't necessarily say that everybody has to go to an attorney. You have to do this and do that and do that. I'm just saying consult with an attorney at the bare minimum, right? So if you want to do it yourself, people do it yourself for all kinds of things, but they will consult. If I'm going to do it myself, sometimes I go to Home Depot and I'll ask questions of the person in the department, or I'll do my research, or I'll study, or I'll watch some videos. The same thing applies here. If you want to do your own, whatever it is, consult with an attorney, pay a consult fee and sit down with somebody and say, hey, this is some stuff that I created. Can you tell me what my documents say?
Right. That's
Are
important.
These documents solid enough for me? Do you see things that I need a little bit more of? Do I need coverage somewhere? Because then it could say, you know what? I may not be able to do it right now, but I can have a plan of action. And the attorney can tell me, all right, this is how much it'll cost. Or you need to, do this and do that. Maybe they'll give you some ideas of some things that you need to add and cover.
Exactly. That's very important. So you have to check in with someone. I'm sure there's been many of us who have had to get on some type of payment plan or some type of arrangement to pay when we didn't have all of the funds at our disposal. Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I learned about as a young girl when I was going shopping, I was so grateful for layaways. I did not know what to do. True. I was so happy for layaways because I would go visit my layaways and see all my closet. Let me see open my boxes. Let me see if that dress I picked out, I got about 3 more months to pay. Just let me make sure everything is still in my box. And
oh my gosh,
honestly,
you're taking me back.
Crazy, but that's what used to happen. I remember my Value City days. But anyway, I digress. What I'm basically saying is, we can talk to attorneys and find out arrangements and options for anything that we need to do out here. Just go get it done and don't make excuses. Find out it's not necessarily just a will. I know some attorneys are out here telling people, forget a will, just get a trust. Just go ahead and get a trust. And if you get a trust, you will probably stand a better chance of avoiding probate altogether. Now, nobody should be guaranteeing anybody anything out here
True.
as an attorney. However, I will say that your chances of avoiding probate altogether with a trust are a lot greater than a will. What are your thoughts on that, Sandy?
I think every tool is for different circumstances. I generally think a trust is probably the most flexible tool that may give you more opportunities to protect different things when it comes to your assets. And I also think it's a great tool if you have children, especially if you have special needs children or special needs adults. If you have, a spouse, if you have aging parents that you're caring for, I think a trust gives you an all around package of information that covers you while you're living and even after you pass away. So to me, it's a really, really great tool. And even if you can't get it now, I think it should be your ultimate goal. But above all else, you should have some plan in place. I always tell the story. My aunt passed away months ago. She didn't have a will. She didn't have a trust. She didn't have any of those documents. What she did have was a beneficiary designation on her bank account. And she had a life insurance policy with beneficiary designations. That's estate planning.
Yeah, beneficiary designations is estate planning. You're absolutely right, because you're not, even when you die, you're putting something, you're tagging all your property, your assets, saying if I die, it goes to this person.
Yep. And you're putting something in place.
You're putting something in place. That's very important. You're absolutely right. And think about those people, Sandy, who own real estate all around the place. They got land in Florida. They got houses in Georgia. They got land and property in Ohio and, East Jesus, Alabama. I mean, people.
Not East Jesus.
My point is that a trust is a good opportunity to bring all that property into ownership into a trust or several trusts, so that you don't have to have family members or people going to each state to probate your assets. That gets very costly. And that's how people lose property, because people run out of money first before they can get the property probated.
True. That's very true. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit of base. We talked a little bit about the importance of the family tree. And I will say this, there are a lot of resources in the online space for you to create a family tree. But honestly, it's really just identifying your family. And you start with as far back as you can collect.
Who's your daddy?
Who's your daddy? Lisa's favorite one. Who's your Lord help us today. So Lisa says, figure out first who's your daddy, who's your mama, daddy? Who's your granddaddy, who's your grandmama, all that.
You're gonna know your mama. You know what? In family law cases, you know why there's always been a presumption of legal custody to the mom when the folks aren't married? You know why, of course.
I'm a little biased in this area because I have unfortunately in the family as well as in friends circle folks who don't know who their mama is because mama wasn't in the picture. But
okay,
I'm seeing that as more of a common trend these days, where I'm seeing single dads. It's a very strange thing to me. But to each their own. But I do agree. I think for many years that was the case, and unfortunately, that whole thing has been abused for a long time. Like, we got to have a show talking about men in the family court system and some of the things that they endure.
Don't get me started, Sandy.
Please, I will put the trigger up. I
practiced family law I have so much to say in those legal areas.
I've had several men as clients, and when I tell you some of the scenarios, and I'm not going to say the women were like, oh, they're so bad, all at fault, but I will say some of the behaviors, it was just like there are children in between the two of you, and some of the behaviors were just like real left. It was like some of these guys are really trying to just see their children and are providing support for their children and are still being dogged. But I digress. I'm not going to go into that story, but I think we definitely, we need to do a Lisa K. Crawford firm and Spectrum Law Firm collab on a family law topic. It might be a little spicy, but maybe we could use some current day things and talk about child support and some of the things that happen, just for legal information, because I think it's good for. We don't practice in these areas anymore. I know I don't. I can't. I couldn't stomach dealing with some of these issues because it's just a lot of family dynamics, and I'm like, this is all pettiness. It has nothing to do with the kids.
Right.
It's just petty.
Right. Right.
So that way, the people who have legitimate cases are not being seen as legitimate, and the rest of you are just messing up the whole system, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, somebody told me, like, well, a lot of these men, they could just stop their child support problems right away. Just going on out there and marry those women. Ain't no more child support. No. I'm like, well, that sounds good, but
these situations can be extremely toxic, male and female included. I've seen some things that I'm like, oh, I just can't stomach thinking about it. But I digress.
We'll talk about it another time.
So, guys, we hope that you enjoyed some little tidbits from today. All in all, we'll say this: when it comes to probate real estate, that means real property that you own that ends up going through the probate court process. Much of what you need to do is preparing in advance. There are deeds that can be done so that you can transfer your interest to the person you want to. There are trusts that can be created. Yes, you can list it in your will, but you're going to be forcing your family through the probate court process. But all in all, not only do you have to plan for what you want to happen to what you own, but you also have to understand who your family tree is and who potentially will receive if you don't have a plan in place. Because you got to consider all of these factors. You can really impact your family negatively by not lining some things up and understanding your family dynamics and your family tree.
Absolutely. Like, what if you own like a children's daycare and you have some nephew who's like a sexual predator and he inherits the school and all the assets? Give me a break. If you don't do estate planning, crap like that can happen.
That's very extreme, Lisa. That's really a scary thought. Like,
I want to scare people, Sandy.
I have no more words today. All I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up. You know what I'm pulling up?
Let's do it.
If y'all didn't see this video, you're going to be seeing it in your sleep. Let's see.
Grandmother.
Oh, I didn't do it right. Hold on. I got to pop it up on.
Roydale and Albertstein's grandmother and my grandmother, okay, they were sisters. So that make me and Roydale and Albertstein, okay, that's going to Roydale.
So just so you guys know, folks, I am Albertstein and my brother is Roydale.
That is hilarious. And that story is as confusing as their story.
Yes. So if you don't understand your family tree, just remember Roydale and Albertstein and the grandmothers and trying to put all those pieces together. Guys, take some time. Just outline your family tree. If you need some help, reach out to Lisa, reach out to myself. We have our Instagram links in the description. You can find Lisa at lisak.crawford on Instagram. You can find me at Spectrum Law on Instagram. And you know what? We're going to try to come back to you guys and talk about some different legal issues. So, stay tuned for some more from Lisa K. Crawford, Esquire, PLLC, and Spectrum Law Firm, Miami, PLLC. Lisa, tell them a little bit about your firm so that we can make sure we promote ourselves as well in the process.
Thank you so much, Sandy. My law firm specializes in the areas of probate and estate planning. So if you have to go to court to get property transferred to the heirs and you need assistance, I help people get through that process. And I also help people to plan on paper. I like to talk with people about what their vision is, what they want, so I can create the type of estate planning that they need. And that's basically it. Forming relationships, understanding people, what they want, what keeps them up at night, and finding out how I can help them. So that's what I do on that side. And on the other side, Sandy and I know that real estate is sold out of probate cases. I am a licensed realtor. If I'm not working as your probate attorney and you need a realtor to help you get the property sold out of probate, I know that process as well. So those are the things that I do. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm Sandy B. Law, and I'm with Spectrum Law Firm Miami PLLC. We are a comprehensive estate planning law firm, and I handle cases throughout the state of Florida. So whether you're all the way up in Duval County or you are down here in Homestead, I can assist you with your estate planning. I also handle guardianship and probate matters. I deal specifically in the guardianship realm with autism families very heavily, as well as aging adults. And on the probate end, man, I handle all kinds of crazy probates, whether it be, multi-sibling families, whether it be interstate issues where there's a probate somewhere else, and then we're doing a Florida probate. I tend to get a lot of complex matters. So if you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. But Lisa and I are here for your service. If you need a probate attorney who also is a probate realtor, please contact Lisa. If you just want someone who can deal with the estate planning, or if you have a guardianship or probate issue, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And we look forward to sharing some more legal topics with you guys.
I like this, Sandy. I like this collabo and working together. I mean, we have common areas, and why not just share information and help people? That's why we're in this space. So I'd love to do this again with you.
Absolutely. All right, guys, stay tuned for more. I hope you guys have a great night. Enjoy a safe holiday weekend, and we'll catch up with you guys again soon.
See ya.
Bye.